Hey everyone, it's Alex, and I am here with my long overdue video about the 45th Saturn Awards nominations. I would have made this video a lot earlier, but the Saturn Awards took much longer than usual in announcing their nominations this year, mainly because, according to them, they wanted to revamp their show and got like whole new producers for it and everything, so as a result, the show will be taking place later on this week, Friday, September 13th. And as a result, the nominations did not come out until July. They usually come out in March, because it's usually February from one year of February to the next in terms of eligible contenders. Well, this year, the eligible contenders are from late February 2018 to early July 2019. So it's a whole year and a half worth of movies and TV shows that are being nominated here. I also would have made this video earlier if I hadn't gotten caught up in life events and stuff, so I apologize for that. I've been wanting to get these videos done earlier, but then things happen and I just forget about them. I try to remind myself, but you know, sometimes just things happen and it just falls on the back burner. But I'm here now, so we'll get through this. Now, usually in the past, the Saturn Awards have never been aired on television or even live streamed online. Well, this year that's about to change. This year the Saturn Awards will be live streamed for the first time in, I believe, 40 years. I thought they had never been streamed before, but apparently they were aired on TV once back in the 1970s. But this year the Saturn Awards will be live streaming this Friday, September 13th at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on the following platforms, which is why I have my computer here so I can read them off: Twitch, WatchMojo, Nerdist, Pluto TV, Shout, and Cinedigm. And also, of course, there are some special awards that are being handed out, which were only announced a few weeks ago. And I'm just going to read off the Hollywood Reporter article, which details these special winners real quick. Alright. So, a trio of Marvel Entertainment figureheads will be honored at this year's Saturn Awards in Hollywood. Marvel Studios President Kevin Feige, Iron Man and Lion King director Jon Favreau, and Jeff Loeb, Executive Vice President and Head of Marvel Television, will receive honorary awards at the 45th annual ceremony on September 13th. The award show, which honors the best in sci-fi, fantasy, and horror entertainment, will take place at Avalon Hollywood and will be streamed for the first time. Feige will receive the inaugural Stan Lee Builder Award, offered to a creative force who has built a narrative world and characters over an extended period of time that have amazed and engaged fans worldwide at the most galactic level, according to the ceremony organizers. Feige's applicable accomplishment, organizers added, is his work helping to create the Marvel Cinematic Universe, now consisting of 23 films released over 11 years. Lee, the award's namesake, died in November at the age of 95. As the safeguard of Stan's iconic legacy, we're thrilled to be associated with such an honorable award. Kevin played a significant part in Stan's life. He had a lot of admiration for him. I know he would be proud to know this has been awarded to Kevin, and we look forward to celebrating with him, Gil Champion, president of Lee's POW Entertainment, said in a statement. Favreau, for his part, will receive the Saturn Visionary Award for his work as a vital voice in modern cinema and groundbreaking visual artist. The honor has previously gone to Avatar director James Cameron. Loeb has been tapped for the Dan Curtis Legacy Award, which lauds accomplishments in genre television. The honor has previously gone to Supernatural creator Eric Kripke and Hannibal executive producer and writer Brian Fuller. So those are the special honors being given out. And just give me a sec so I can put my computer down and we'll get into the awards themselves. Alright, I'm back. And like I always do, I'm going to go over all the categories without commenting on my personal thoughts. And then once I'm done with that, I'll go back and I'll look over all the major categories. And I'll look over all the categories and give you my thoughts on what I like, what I don't like, and what I think got snubbed. So there's a lot of nominations, so let's get right on into them. Here are the nominations for the 45th Saturn Awards. Starting off with the DVD categories. Best DVD Blu-ray Release: Fahrenheit 451, Jonathan, Kin, King Cohen, Nancy Drew and the Hidden Staircase, Time Freak. Best DVD Blu-ray Classic Film Release: Deep Rising, Jack the Giant Killer, Maximum Overdrive, The Reincarnation of Peter Proud, The Spiral Staircase, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Best DVD Blu-ray Special Edition Release: The Changeling Limited Edition, Crimson Peak Limited Edition, A Fistful of Dollars Special Edition, Horror Express Special Edition, 12 Monkeys Collector's Edition, Waterworld Limited Edition. Best DVD Blu-ray Collection Release: The Bloodthirsty Trilogy, The Complete Sartana, Jack Ryan 5-Film Collection, The Matrix Trilogy, The Pink Panther Cartoon Collection, Universal Classic Monsters 30-Film Collection. Best DVD Blu-ray Television Movie or Series Release: The Ghost of Sierra de Cobre, The Martian Chronicles Complete Miniseries, The Night Stalker, The Night Strangler, The Outer Limits Seasons 1 and 2, Trilogy of Terror. Alright. Now onto the television categories. But before I do the television categories, things are going to be a little bit different for them this year. All the major categories from before will still be here, but now that streaming shows have really increased a lot in the last few years, streaming shows are now going to have their own separate categories in terms of shows and even actors. So now we'll get on into those categories right now. Best Young Actor or Actress on Television: KJ Apa, Riverdale, Tosin Cole, Doctor Who, Cameron Cuff, Krypton, David Mazouz, Gotham, Cole Sprouse, Riverdale, Benjamin Wadsworth, Deadly Class, Maisie Williams, Game of Thrones. Best Supporting Actor on Television: Jonathan Banks, Better Call Saul, Nikolai Coster-Waldau, Game of Thrones, Peter Dinklage, Game of Thrones, David Harewood, Supergirl, Ed Harris, Westworld, Lenny James, Fear the Walking Dead, Carrie Payton, The Walking Dead. Best Supporting Actress on Television: Gwendolyn Christie, Game of Thrones, Danai Gurira, The Walking Dead, Lena Headey, Game of Thrones, Melissa McBride, The Walking Dead, Rhea Seehorn, Better Call Saul, Sophie Skelton, Outlander, Sophie Turner, Game of Thrones. Best Actor on Television: Grant Gustin, The Flash, Kit Harington, Game of Thrones, Sam Heughan, Outlander, Andrew Lincoln, The Walking Dead, Seth MacFarlane, The Orville, Bill Pullman, The Sinner, Jeffrey Wright, Westworld. Best Actress on Television: Katrina Balfe, Outlander, Melissa Benoist, Supergirl, Emilia Clarke, Game of Thrones, Sandra Oh, Killing Eve, Adrian Palicki, The Orville, Candice Patton, The Flash, Jodie Whittaker, Doctor Who. Best Guest Performer on Television: Rainer Bach, Better Call Saul, John Cryer, Supergirl, Sidney Lemon, Fear the Walking Dead, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, The Walking Dead, Tanya Pinkins, Fear the Walking Dead, Ed Spielers, Outlander. Best Supporting Actor in a Streaming Presentation: Wilson Cruz, Star Trek Discovery, Michelle Huisman, The Haunting of Hill House, Timothy Hutton, The Haunting of Hill House, Maxwell Jenkins, Lost in Space, Doug Jones, Star Trek Discovery, Ethan Peck, Star Trek Discovery, Michael Sheen, Good Omens. Best Supporting Actress in a Streaming Presentation: Maya Hawke, Stranger Things, Ellen Page, The Umbrella Academy, Victoria Pedretti, The Haunting of Hill House, Parker Posey, Lost in Space, Taylor Russell, Lost in Space, Sissy Spacek, Castle Rock, Deborah Ann Woll, Daredevil. Best Actor in a Streaming Presentation: Penn Badgley, You. John Bernthal, The Punisher. Charlie Cox, Daredevil. Zac Efron, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. John Krasinski, Jack Ryan. David Tennant, Good Omens. Henry Thomas, The Haunting of Hill House. Best Actress in a Streaming Presentation: Carla Gugino, The Haunting of Hill House. Elizabeth Lail, You. Natasha Lyonne, Russian Doll. Sonequa Martin Green, Star Trek Discovery. Molly Parker, Lost in Space. Kristen Ritter, Jessica Jones. Kiernan Shipka, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Best Animated Television Series: Archer, DuckTales, Family Guy, The Simpsons, Star Wars Resistance. Best Action or Thriller Television Series: Better Call Saul, Killing Eve, The Last Ship, Mr. Mercedes, The Purge, Riverdale, The Sinner. Best Fantasy Television Series: American Gods, Charmed, Game of Thrones, The Good Place, The Good Witch, The Magicians, Outlander, The Outpost. Best Horror Television Series: American Horror Story Apocalypse, A Discovery of Witches, Fear the Walking Dead, Nosferatu, Preacher, Supernatural, The Walking Dead, What We Do in the Shadows. Best Superhero Television Series: Arrow, Black Lightning, Cloak and Dagger, The Flash, Gotham, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl. Best Science Fiction Television Series: Counterpart, Doctor Who, Krypton, Manifest, The 100, The Orville, Roswell, New Mexico, Westworld. Best Streaming Horror and Thriller Series: Castle Rock, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, The Handmaid's Tale, The Haunting of Hill House, Stranger Things, The Twilight Zone, You. Best Streaming Superhero Television Series: Daredevil, Doom Patrol, Jessica Jones, The Punisher, Runaways, Swamp Thing, The Umbrella Academy. Best Streaming Science Fiction, Action, and Fantasy Series: Black Mirror, The Expanse, Good Omens, Jack Ryan, Lost in Space, Russian Doll, Star Trek Discovery. And now onto the film nominations. Best Costume Design: Michael Wilkinson, Aladdin. Kim Barrett, Aquaman. Judianna Makovsky, Avengers Endgame. Sandy Powell, Mary Poppins Returns. Chen Minzing, Shadow. Leah Butler, Shazam. Best Film Editing: James Herbert, Aladdin. Kirk Morey, Aquaman. Jeffrey Ford and Matthew Schmidt, Avengers Endgame. Evan Schiff, John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. Christopher Tellefson, A Quiet Place. Nicholas Mansour, Us. Best Makeup: John Blake and Brian Sipe, Avengers Endgame. Judy Chin and Mike Marino, The Dead Don't Die. Bill Corso, Destroyer. Lisa Love and Tate Steinsick, Dragged Across Concrete. Tristan Versluis, Naomi Dunn, and Duncan Jarman, Overlord. Anik Chartier and Adrian Moreau, Pet Sematary. Mark Coulier and Fernanda Perez, Suspiria. Best Music: Alan Menken, Aladdin. Alan Silvestri, Avengers Endgame. Danny Elfman, Dumbo. Bear McCreary, Godzilla King of the Monsters. Mark Shaman, Mary Poppins Returns. Alan Silvestri, Ready Player One. Best Production Design: Gemma Jackson, Aladdin. Bill Brzezinski, Aquaman. Charles Wood, Avengers Endgame. Rick Heinrichs, Dumbo. John Mayer, Mary Poppins Returns. Horace Ma Guang Wing, Shadow. Ruth De Jong, Us. Best Special Effects. Interestingly, for this one, they don't list the visual effects artists' names like they've done in the past. But anyway, the nominated movies are Aladdin, Avengers Endgame, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Mission Impossible Fallout, A Quiet Place, Ready Player One, Spider-Man Far From Home. Best Screenplay. Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, Avengers Endgame. Drew Goddard, Bad Times at the El Royale. Oh Jung-mi and Lee Chang-dong, Burning. S. Craig Zahler, Dragged Across Concrete. Christopher McQuarrie, Mission Impossible Fallout. Brian Woods, Scott Beck, and John Krasinski, A Quiet Place. Jordan Peele, Us. Best Young Actor or Actress. Evan Alex, Us. Asher Angel, Shazam. Millie Bobby Brown, Godzilla King of the Monsters. Jack Dylan Grazer, Shazam. Tom Holland, Spider-Man Far From Home. Shahadi Wright Joseph, Us. Millicent Simmons, A Quiet Place. Best Supporting Actor. Josh Brolin, Avengers Infinity War. John Lithgow, Pet Sematary. Lin-Manuel Miranda, Mary Poppins Returns. Louis Pullman, Bad Times at the El Royale. Jeremy Renner, Avengers Endgame. Will Smith, Aladdin. Stephen Yeun, Burning. Best Supporting Actress. Cynthia Erivo, Bad Times at the El Royale. Karen Gillan, Avengers Endgame. Amber Heard, Aquaman. Scarlett Johansson, Avengers Endgame. Naomi Scott, Aladdin. Haley Steinfeld, Bumblebee. Zendaya, Spider-Man Far From Home. Best Actor. Jeff Bridges, Bad Times at the El Royale. Nicolas Cage, Mandy. Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible Fallout. Robert Downey Jr., Avengers Endgame. Chris Evans, Avengers Endgame. Mel Gibson, Dragged Across Concrete. Keanu Reeves, John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum. Best Actress. Emily Blunt, Mary Poppins Returns. Toni Collette, Hereditary. Jamie Lee Curtis, Halloween. Nicole Kidman, Destroyer. Brie Larson, Captain Marvel. Lupita Nyong'o, Us. Octavia Spencer, Ma. Best Director. Guy Ritchie, Aladdin. James Wan, Aquaman. Anthony Russo and Joe Russo, Avengers Endgame. Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, Captain Marvel. Karen Kusama, Destroyer. Steven Spielberg, Ready Player One. Zhang Yimou, Shadow. Jordan Peele, Us. Best Animated Film. The Grinch. How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. Incredibles 2. Ralph Breaks the Internet. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Toy Story 4. Best International Film. Now this can include any film made outside the United States, whether it's in English or whether it's in a foreign language. Aniara. Border. Burning. Ghost Stories. The Guilty. Shadow. Best Independent Film. American Animals. Anna and the Apocalypse. The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot. Mandy. Ophelia. Summer of '84. The Tomorrow Man. Best Comic Book Film. Aquaman. Avengers Endgame. Avengers Infinity War. Captain Marvel. Shazam. Spider-Man Far From Home. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Best Action or Adventure Film. Cold Pursuit. Escape Room. Glass. John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum. Mission Impossible Fallout. Skyscraper. Best Fantasy Film. Aladdin. Dumbo. Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. Godzilla King of the Monsters. Mary Poppins Returns, Toy Story 4, Yesterday. Best Horror Film: The Dead Don't Die, Halloween, Hereditary, Overlord, Pet Sematary, A Quiet Place, Us. Best Thriller Film: Bad Samaritan, Bad Times at the El Royale, Destroyer, Dragged Across Concrete, Greta, Ma, Searching. Best Science Fiction Film: Alita Battle Angel, Bumblebee, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, Ready Player One, Solo: A Star Wars Story, Sorry to Bother You, Upgrade. And those are the nominations for the 45th Saturn Awards. Now let's see what I think of them. The DVD categories, I don't really give commentary about those. The television categories, there's not really much I can comment about. I'm not surprised to see Game of Thrones get so much love here. I know that the fan and critical response to the last season has been very controversial, to say the least. But obviously, Saturn voters really, I guess, seem to at least like the show in terms of acting, at least, because, the television categories don't really honor craft categories like directing, writing, cinematography, makeup, or any of that. Most of these shows I haven't seen, so I can't really talk about them, of what I think got snubbed. Even though I haven't seen the newest season of Stranger Things yet, I'm kind of surprised it didn't get more nominations. Because the show, from what I understand, still seems to be quite popular and quite beloved by its fans, and the newest season did receive pretty good reviews, so I'm kind of surprised it didn't get more recognition from that. I'd also wish they'd expand the recognition for The Handmaid's Tale beyond just a series nomination. I mean, still, there's never been an acting nomination by the Saturn Awards for that show, not even for lead star Elizabeth Moss. I mean, what the hell? They don't nominate her, they don't nominate any of the supporting cast, like Ann Dowd, Alexis Bledel, Joseph Fiennes, Yvonne Strahovski, Max Minghella, or even some of the more newer additions like Bradley Whitford, or even like Cherry Jones for a guest performer nomination. Is it grounded too much in reality for their taste and not enough in fantasy? I mean, I don't get what's going on, or do they just not like the show enough? Although I should point out that two of the acting nominees for the television categories happen to be relatives of some Hollywood legends. So, for instance, in the Best Supporting Actor in a Streaming Presentation category, Ethan Peck, he happens to be the grandson of the legendary actor Gregory Peck. And Maya Hawke, who's nominated for Supporting Actress in a Streaming Presentation, many people probably may already know this, but Maya Hawke happens to have both of her parents be in the industry as well. Her parents are Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman. So with that, we'll move now into the film categories, where I can talk about a lot of these nominations and what I like, what I don't like, and what I think got snubbed. Alright, for Best Costume Design, the only nominees I've seen here are Aladdin and Mary Poppins Returns, both of which are very well deserving of their nominations. Aladdin was a remake that a lot of people were not looking forward to from its trailers. I wasn't as angry by the trailers as some people, but I was still pretty hesitant. But it turned out to be a pretty good film. Nowhere near as good as the original, but decent enough. But the costume design, wow, it was just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, lots of bright colors that popped out at you. I mean, and there were lots of people that they had to design for, especially with the musical numbers when you have all those extras, particularly during the song Prince Ali. I mean, and Mary Poppins Returns also had excellent costume design. Very bright and colorful as well, although not quite the same as Aladdin's costumes, obviously. These ones were specifically meant to look like, 1930s clothes that people would wear. And I thought they did a fantastic job, and I thought Sandy Powell did a fantastic job. She's one of the most beloved costume designers in the industry. As for snubs, I can't really think of too many snubs here. I guess the only one that really comes to mind is First Man. I mean, those costumes might not be as flashy and bright as the costumes in here, but it is set in the 1960s, and they did have to recreate the types of clothes that many people wore back then, because most people don't dress the way they did in the 1960s nowadays. Yeah, in fact, First Man is a film you're going to hear pop up a lot, because trust me, that film should have gotten way more recognition in these categories. I guess maybe they felt the same way general audiences did with a meh, whatever, but it's a damn shame because that film really, really deserved a lot more attention. It got all the critical praise that it rightfully deserved, but it definitely deserved more of that audience attention. Oh, and also Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald. I know not a lot of people like that film. I thought it was okay, but regardless of your personal feelings, you can't deny that the costume design in that movie looked pretty spectacular. Maybe not as good as some of the other films in the Harry Potter universe, but decent enough. Alright, now on to Best Film Editing. I'm really glad to see A Quiet Place and Us in here. A Quiet Place in particular had some really tight editing that kept the pace of that film flowing very smoothly, because I was extremely on edge and tense in my seat until the film was finally over, and I was just like, whoa. And then same with Us, that was a film that, kept things very tense to the point where you didn't know what was happening, and the editing especially proves useful near the end when certain things are revealed that kind of twist things completely on their head and make you do like a 180 over almost everything you've watched. If you've seen Us, I'm sure you'll know exactly what scene I'm talking about. For those of you that somehow haven't seen the movie by now, don't worry, I won't give away spoilers, but make sure you go and watch it. Let's see, as for snubs here, let me think from the genres. First Man, I'm going to definitely throw that in there. That was a major snub because, with a space film that's over 2 hours, if you don't have good editing in a film like that, it's going to fall apart. Let me think. Suspiria also had some really great editing. That film was 2.5 hours, quite long, and I never felt bored while watching it. My only complaint about the film was that in the last half hour, the story started to go a little off the rails, but that wasn't necessarily the editor's fault. I blame that more on the director, Luca Guadagnino. Oh, and also, Sorry to Bother You had some really great editing. There's a lot of scenes in that film where the main character, who's playing who's a telemarketer, he's taking on these calls and it's imagining the living room of the people he's calling in, and how it does that, it's absolutely brilliant. For Best Makeup, this is a pretty good category, at least from the two that I've seen. I've only seen Pet Sematary and Suspiria from these nominees, and they're both well deserved, especially Suspiria, because Suspiria, of course, famously puts Tilda Swinton in old age prosthetic makeup to make her look like an elderly man, because she plays 3 characters in that movie. The only real snub I can think of as of right now would probably be Us, mainly because of the makeup design they had to create for the Tethered, all the evil doppelgangers of all the characters in the film, because, they're obviously played by the same actors who play the normal characters, but their makeup is a little bit different because, they're the evil versions. For Best Music, Aladdin, very glad to see that in here. I mean, it was more or less a recreation of Alan Menken's score from the animated film, but, it was still good to hear. Dumbo, I honestly don't really remember much about the score from Dumbo. Mary Poppins Returns, very glad to see that in here. That had a really great score. Ready Player One, that too had a really great score. And with Mary Poppins Returns, songs in particular were also really good. I wouldn't say they were as good as the songs from the 1964 film, because those are like some of the best Disney songs ever written, so it was almost an impossibly high standard to meet, but for what they were really good. As for snubs, again, First Man, I gotta mention that because that space films often almost always have brilliant music, and First Man is no exception. The music in that film was just absolutely breathtaking to listen to, especially for like the sequences in space and near the end of the film. And also Suspiria. Where is Suspiria? Because that film's music was easily its own central character. And Tom York of Radiohead did the music for that film, and it sounded absolutely brilliant, and it fit the film perfectly. Alright, now for Best Production Design. Aladdin, absolutely, that production design looked absolutely beautiful, and I think that was one of the key strong aspects of the film, that even those who didn't like it can admit the production design at least matched the animated film the best that it could. Dumbo, very good production design. Maybe a little too Tim Burton-esque at times, because Tim Burton films have a very unique look with their production design, and this film, it's set in right after World War I, so while it does reflect the period in terms of production design, and especially with a circus, it does kind of feel a little too much like fantasy, because in the beginning they were trying to establish a very real world feel for Dumbo, but then it kind of just verged into Tim Burton fantasy, which, of course, I know that's his stronghold, but I felt maybe he should have toned it down a little bit with the Burtonisms, I guess you could say. Mary Poppins Returns, that absolutely deserved to be in there, because they recreated 1930s London to an absolutely beautiful degree. And Us, admittedly, its production design doesn't really always get a chance to stand out, because most of the film takes place at night, and we don't really get to see the interior of the houses and everything, because it's all dark. But it's not bad production design though. And the carnival parts though, that did look really cool. I will give it that. As for snubs, First Man again, because they really recreated the 1960s very well. Suspiria, I thought, had really great production design, because they had to, recreate the look of a 1970s ballet school that is, a secret coven for witches. Sorry to Bother You had really great production design. It's mostly set in a telemarketing office, but then, of course, it goes into other territories. A Quiet Place had some great production design, because, admittedly, a good chunk of it is set outdoors, but, of course, you have to create that kind of a look if you can't find it naturally. And of course there's the interior of the house the family lives in, with how they're equipped to deal with these aliens that are constantly hunting them. So that, I think, should have deserved some recognition. Best special effects. Not really surprised by any of these nominees, and not really anything to complain about. I guess maybe Solo: A Star Wars Story should have been in here. I know there's a lot of mixed reactions to that movie. I liked it for what it was. It's not the best Star Wars film by a long shot, but I don't think it's anywhere near as bad or disappointing as some people claim it is. But it had some amazing special effects, especially the famous Kessel Run sequence. Alright. Now for Best Screenplay. There are some good choices in here, like Bad Times at the El Royale. That is a very writing-heavy film that depends a lot on its screenplay, especially with all these characters who interact with each other in various different ways, and they all have somewhat loose connections to each other. This film feels very much like Pulp Fiction, and how these characters all come together at this one moment in time, even though they all come from very separate backgrounds. But it worked really well. The other ones I can talk about: A Quiet Place, very excellent screenplay. I know some people might be wondering why that would be in here, because most of the film is told without dialogue, but of course they do use a lot of sign language, and of course you still need a screenplay to convey that before you film it. And I was on edge the whole time, so I think it's well deserved. Us, very good screenplay, definitely well deserved. If I had to pick some snubs, First Man would be one. I thought that was an excellent screenplay. Searching, that was an excellent screenplay, and that was a film that was told entirely almost through a computer. We see people on Facebook or on YouTube or, through Skype, because John Cho's character in that movie is trying to use the internet to find his missing daughter, and almost all of it is set on a computer, like I said before, and usually most of those films don't do very well because of the writing. but the writing and searching was excellent all throughout, except for maybe one cliche moment near the end, which I won't spoil. I know that moment didn't bother some people. It bothered me a little bit, but it wasn't enough to ruin the film. So, I'd still think, despite that cliche moment, the writing still deserved a lot more recognition. Sorry to Bother You also was an excellent screenplay. I would have definitely put that in there. And also Black Klansman, which won the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. I know that might not seem like a Saturn Awards type of movie, but I think it honestly could have been, because it is kind of a thriller in some ways. It's based on a true story, but it's a thriller in that you have these two police detectives who are trying to take down a local chapter of the Ku Klux Klan. And there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of action in certain scenes. It keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole time. So I definitely consider it a thriller, maybe not your traditional thriller, but a thriller nonetheless. And I would have definitely also nominated it for some of the craft categories like production design, editing, music, and things like that. At least the Oscars recognized it in categories like that, and I wish the Saturn Awards had done so as well. Alright, now for Best Young Actor or Actress. Both Evan Alex and Shahadi Wright-Joseph were excellent in Us. If I had to pick which one of them was probably better, I'd say Evan Alex, because I think his character of the two kids gets more to do, especially with his doppelganger. I haven't seen Shazam, but I've heard great things about Asher Angel and Jack Dylan Grazer, especially Jack Dylan Grazer. And of course, Jack Dylan Grazer played Eddie in It Chapter 1 2 years ago, and he was absolutely perfect in that role. He pretty much nailed Eddie from the book to a T. And yes, I have read It the book, longest book I've ever read in my life. My copy is 1,153 pages, but it was definitely worth the read. I didn't see Godzilla King of the Monsters because I haven't seen the first Godzilla. I heard Millie Bobby Brown was really good in it. Tom Holland, he's won this category the last 2 years in a row for Captain America Civil War and Spider-Man Homecoming. It'd be interesting if he wins again a third time. And I'm really excited for this actress, Millicent Simmons, in A Quiet Place. She gave, I thought, one of the best performances out of all the performances I've seen last year. She was phenomenal in A Quiet Place. In my opinion, I think she was the best performer in the whole movie, to be honest. And it would be nice if she's the one that wins this category, because she has the biggest character arc in that film, particularly with an incident that happens in the beginning of the film and the guilt she feels and what she has to do to overcome that guilt. So at least from the films I have seen, this is a pretty good list, but if I had to pick some snubs, I have at least 3 that I can think of. First of all, where are Millie Shapiro and Alex Wolff for Hereditary? Both of them were fantastic. Millie Shapiro, her screen time in Hereditary is rather limited because of what happens to her character, but until that moment happens, she's honestly quite creepy, especially when she just clucks her mouth. It's like, ooh. And then Alex Wolff. Oh my god, Alex Wolff was fantastic in Hereditary. I mean, he's the one who probably has the biggest character arc, right up next to Toni Collette, who plays his mother. And my god, Alex Wolff is absolutely incredible. I've seen him in a couple other things, but this, I think, is his best performance he's given to date, and I really hope this opens a lot of doors for him as an actor. And then also Jete Lawrence, if that's how you say her name, from Pet Sematary. She played Ellie Creed, the daughter. I thought she was fantastic, and especially what happens to her in the last third of the film, which I won't spoil, but if you kind of know the story of Pet Sematary for either the book or the original film, you kind of might know what I mean, although of course this Pet Sematary, they make a major change in something. But she was fantastic. Actually, there's 4 snubs, so that was 3. The 4th one, which I just remembered, is Chloe Grace Moretz for Greta. She was fantastic in that film. Greta, that was the Stalker film that starred Chloe Grace Moretz and Isabelle Huppert, where Chloe Grace Moretz befriends Isabelle Huppert's character, who seems like a nice, lonely woman, but then she starts stalking her and harassing her, and just becomes a full-on nightmare from there. It kind of borrows a lot from films like Fatal Attraction and Misery, which is good in some ways and bad in other ways, but overall it was a good film. Maybe not one of the best horror films of this decade, but there are other films that are way, way worse. Let's see, Best Supporting Actor. I'm very glad for a lot of these actors that are in here. John Lithgow was absolutely fantastic in Pet Sematary. He was probably pitch perfect to play the character of Judd Crandall, because I think he really captured all of Judd's mannerisms from the original book. Fred Gwynne was fine as Judd Crandall in the original Pet Sematary, but I think John Lithgow really embodies the character more than Fred Gwynne did. But then again, I'm one of the people that thinks the new Pet Sematary is actually better than the old one, because they had better production values, I think, a bigger budget, and I think some better actors to work with, but that's just me. Lin-Manuel Miranda, I really loved him in Mary Poppins Returns. I think he was excellent to basically be the new Dick Van Dyke, because that's basically who he is. He's not actually playing the character of Bert, but a character who's meant to be basically like Bert. Lewis Pullman, he was really good in Bad Times at the El Royale, but I'll be honest, if I were to pick this category myself, I probably would have nominated John Hamm instead, because I think John Hamm had a bigger presence in the film, and I think he had more time to give out a better performance. And then Will Smith in Aladdin. Now, do I think he was better than Robin Williams as the genie? Oh, absolutely not. And I'm guessing even Will Smith probably knew he was never going to be able to top the brilliance of Robin Williams' performance. However, he manages to put his own spin on the genie and still kind of make it his role too. He doesn't surpass Robin Williams in any way, but he never copies off him either, which is good, because the last thing you'd want for an Aladdin remake is someone to do a copy of Robin Williams' performance without adding the brilliance of it. But Will Smith manages to do a fine job in his own right. As for snubs, I think the biggest one for me here is Donald Glover for Solo: A Star Wars Story, because I thought he absolutely nailed it as Lando Calrissian. I mean, even people who hated the movie thought he did a brilliant job, and I heard Donald Glover even personally consulted the original Lando, Billy D. Williams, to ask him for advice on how to do this and do that when it came to playing Lando, and it obviously worked, because I thought he was absolutely brilliant. Even Woody Harrelson I thought was really good in Solo: A Star Wars Story, and it would have been cool to see him get a nomination. Let me think. Armie Hammer for Sorry to Bother You. His screen time is very limited, but when he's on screen, oh my god, it is like bonkers, off the wall, hysterical. It's like WTF, kind of like wow. I wouldn't say it's like his best performance ever, that would be The Social Network, but it's certainly good enough for the small amount of time that he is on screen. And then Best Supporting Actress. I am so glad Cynthia Erivo finally got some kind of major recognition for Bad Times at the El Royale, because I absolutely loved her in this movie, and I feel that she was robbed at the Oscars for a Best Supporting Actress nomination. I mean, granted, she didn't get any recognition at any of the other major award shows either, although she did get a few critics nominations, but she was the standout in this film for sure. I mean, and that's not easy when you have an all-star cast that includes Jeff Bridges, John Hamm, Chris Hemsworth, Dakota Johnson, and many others. But she was fantastic, and of course she's an amazing singer, because she was on Broadway a couple years ago in a revival of The Color Purple and won a Tony Award for it, and she shows off her singing chops in this movie, and wow, she is phenomenal. And of course this year she's going to be playing Harriet Tubman in the biopic Harriet, and there are some who think she could get Oscar buzz for that, so hopefully that'll happen for her, but I'm at least glad to see she's in this category. The only other one in this category who I've actually seen is Naomi Scott for Aladdin, and to be honest, she honestly felt more like a lead in that movie rather than supporting, because Jasmine to me has always been as much of a co-lead in Aladdin as Aladdin himself has. But, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter either way, because of course Aladdin is still about Aladdin in the end, but Jasmine is probably the other most important character. So I guess you could say it doesn't really matter whether she's nominated as a lead or a supporting actress. But she was really good in Aladdin. I will give her that. And although I didn't see Bumblebee, I'm honestly kind of surprised Haley Steinfeld is nominated here, because the trailers made it look like she was definitely the lead in that film, at least with the human characters. Let's see, as for snubs, probably the biggest one for me here is Tilda Swinton for Suspiria. I mean, the woman is playing 3 different roles, including an old man. So if that's not enough to get her a nomination, what will? And she received a lot of acclaim for her performances in Suspiria, with some even thinking she should be in the Oscar race, but of course she wasn't. But it would have been nice to at least have her be nominated here, because playing 3 roles is challenging, especially when they're all very different from one another. And, in this case, she's even being more daring and playing the opposite gender of herself. She's playing an old man for a good chunk of the film, and she's completely unrecognizable underneath all the prosthetic makeup. No one would have assumed it was her, if she hadn't actually revealed that, yes, that's me playing that old man. And another one, and many consider this a big Oscar snub, is Claire Foy for First Man. At first I wasn't sure what to think of her performance, because I was wondering what's all the buzz for it. But then near the end, when she says to her husband Neil Armstrong, you tell our kids you might never be coming back because I can't do it anymore. Because this is right when he's about to go off to the moon, and they don't know if they're going to survive the mission or not. Of course they do, but I can only imagine the fear that must have been in her heart before he left for that mission. She really nailed that scene, and it's too bad she didn't get more recognition for it. Alright, Best Actor. Well, unfortunately, Jeff Bridges is the only one I've seen out of these nominees, so I'm sure all the others are really good. I've heard of most of them, but haven't gotten around to seeing them just because I'm behind in a lot of these franchises, particularly the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I need to watch all the other films before I watch the newer films. And I've said before, I just got busy with other things, and they haven't always made the top of my priority list, but I do promise I will watch them someday. And then Dragged Across Concrete, that was a film that just never came to my area. We do get a lot of independent films, but not all of them, and Dragged Across Concrete wasn't one of them. But Jeff Bridges, he was really good in Bad Times at the El Royale. As for snubs, I'd say Alden Ehrenreich for Solo: A Star Wars Story. Was he as good as Harrison Ford as Han Solo? No, but of course Harrison Ford's performance is so iconic it's probably impossible for anyone to come close to it, but he did a good job nonetheless. Lakeith Stanfield for Sorry to Bother You, he should have been recognized here, because he was great as the character Cassius Green, who's having to deal with this conscience of, should I be working for this telemarketing organization? Should I be rising up in the ranks? Are they doing good business practices? Because that's part of the greater mystery of the film. Also missing is Ty Sheridan from Ready Player One. He was excellent in that movie. I think he's one of the best young actors in Hollywood right now in general. If you want another great film of his to watch and you haven't seen before, go watch the movie Mud, because he's absolutely phenomenal in that. And then also John David Washington for Black Klansman. He was absolutely incredible in that, and it was my favorite film of 2018, and he's just as talented as his father, Denzel Washington, and I think he has a bright future ahead of him. For Best Actress, this is a very solid lineup. Emily Blunt was fantastic in Mary Poppins Returns. Not as good as Julie Andrews, although that would have been a challenge for any actress, but she's good nonetheless. Toni Collette, really great in Hereditary. I know a lot of people were upset when she didn't get an Oscar nomination, and she was excellent for most of the film. There was 1 or 2 moments where I think she went a little too over the top, but other than that, she was phenomenal. Didn't see Halloween, unfortunately. I wanted to see Destroyer, but it never came to my area. And with Captain Marvel, I'm behind on the MCU, but I love Brie Larson as an actress overall. Lupita Nyong'o, absolutely fabulous in Us. If the Oscars were happening tomorrow, she would definitely probably be nominated, I think. Whether that happens at the end of the year, we'll see. but she definitely gives a magnificent Oscar-caliber performance, especially since she's playing two roles, her main character Adelaide and her Adelaide's doppelganger Red. And as Red, oh my god, she is scary as hell. Same with Octavia Spencer in Ma. This is like her first lead role and her first villain role, and oh boy, you can tell how she relishes the hell out of playing this character. Admittedly, the movie is very flawed. The secondary teenage characters don't feel very developed as characters. They're very one-dimensional. And admittedly, Octavia Spencer's motivations, when they're revealed, do feel kind of cliched, because movies have done those kinds of motivations before. But nevertheless, she is absolutely fantastic. The only real snub I can think of at this point is Dakota Johnson for Suspiria, because she was absolutely incredible in that. She made you invested in her character throughout the whole 2.5-hour runtime. And also Isabelle Huppert for Greta. She kind of combines Glenn Close's performance from Fatal Attraction with Kathy Bates' performance in Misery as this obsessive stalker who harasses Chloe Grace Moretz. And you can tell, like Octavia Spencer, that she's having an absolute ball with this role. At times, maybe she's a little too over the top, but oh my god, for the most part, she is really, really creepy. Alright, for Best Director, Guy Ritchie for Aladdin. I'll admit, this was a massive improvement for him over King Arthur Legend of the Sword, but there were definitely some things he could have done a lot better, particularly with some side characters that were in this film, but not the animated film, that kind of felt unnecessarily shoehorned in. Steven Spielberg for Ready Player One, absolutely. Jordan Peele for Us, definitely. Some big snubs, though, there's Ari Aster for Hereditary, Luca Guadagnino for Suspiria, even though I thought the last 30 minutes maybe went a little off the rails. For the most part, his direction was very solid. Spike Lee for Black Klansman, because that was my favorite film of the year. Damien Chazelle for First Man, and probably the biggest snub, though, and I don't understand, and especially since this is a horror film and a well-directed horror film, where is John Krasinski for A Quiet Place? I mean, that film was not only one of the most acclaimed horror films of 2018, but one of the most acclaimed films, period. Now, I know he didn't get recognized by, like, the Golden Globes or the Oscars or any of the big awards groups, but this would have been perfect for him to be recognized for his direction. And you snub him? What the hell? I mean, how is Guy Ritchie's direction from Aladdin better than John Krasinski's in A Quiet Place? Is it because Aladdin's more recent and A Quiet Place was over a year ago? Well, Ready Player One came out like a week before A Quiet Place, and you nominate that, but is that just because it's Steven Spielberg? Now, Spielberg deserves to be here, but so does John Krasinski. I mean, A Quiet Place, it was one of the most intense horror movie experiences of my life, and you don't get an intense experience like that without great direction. Because horror movies usually suffer if they lack great direction, but A Quiet Place is not like that. It's so breathtaking that you literally have to go, whew, when it's over, because you've just been pulled into such an intense world you can't breathe because you're so anticipating what the next step is. And it takes talent to do that. So shame on you for not including John Krasinski in this lineup. Alright, Best Animated Film. The Grinch, I mean, I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. I mean, the trailers were god-awful, but it just really didn't need to be made. They tried to update some things, like by having Cindy Lou Who be the daughter of a single mom, but it really doesn't add anything to the story at all. Just go watch the original special from the 60s, or even the Jim Carrey film. I know that may not be a popular thing to say, but I like the Jim Carrey film. I think it does a better job than this new one. How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. I don't think it's a masterpiece like some people say, and well, I don't think any of the Dragon films are masterpieces. They're really good though, but I think they do have a few storytelling problems, but this one was definitely a beautiful conclusion overall to the trilogy. Incredibles 2, absolutely, that was one of the best Pixar sequels that's ever been made, and it was well worth the 14-year wait. I didn't get to see Ralph Breaks the Internet, unfortunately, just because I had some personal things going on in my life at the time it came out that kind of prevented me from seeing it. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, excellent movie. I thought maybe the villain's motivations were a little weak at times, and there was some side character I wish was explored more, but other than that, absolutely incredible. And Toy Story 4, you know, I was a little worried, like many people, that this film didn't need to be made, and it might technically be the weakest of the Toy Story films, but it's still really good in its own right, and, you know, I'm not mad that I saw it, because I really liked it. Best International Film, haven't seen any of these. I heard a lot about Burning, and there were a lot of people who thought it would get nominated at the Oscars for Best Foreign Language Film, well, now being called Best International Film starting next year, but it sadly didn't. I wish Roma could be in here because that got so much acclaim, and of course it won the Oscar, but of course it's not science fiction, fantasy, or horror or anything like that. It's a family drama. Best Independent Film, I did not see any of these. Most of them did not come out where I live. I heard a lot about American Animals. I heard it was really good. I've heard a lot about Anna and the Apocalypse. I've heard some people describe it as like Shaun of the Dead meets La La Land. I've heard a little bit about The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot, only that I just know it stars Sam Elliott. Mandy, I heard that was a really good film, and that it was like one of Nicolas Cage's best performances in a long time. I really wanted to see Ophelia, but it never came out in my area. I did read the book, and it has an all-star cast like Daisy Ridley and Tom Felton. Basically, it retells the story of Hamlet from, obviously, Ophelia's point of view. I have no idea what Summer of '84 is. I wanted to see The Tomorrow Man so badly, but I just got busy with other things, you know, sad as it is, but it happens. But I wanted to see The Tomorrow Man because it actually filmed near where I live. I live near Rochester, New York, and they actually filmed a good portion of that movie up here. So maybe if it's on Netflix, I'll catch it, or maybe if my library has a copy of it, I'll rent it. Best Comic Book Film. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is the only one I've seen, but I really liked it. Best Action or Adventure Film. Cold Pursuit was okay. It's a remake of a Norwegian film called In Order of Disappearance, and it's actually directed by the same director of the Norwegian film. And it's pretty much exactly the same, like every plot point, line of dialogue, pretty much the same. But this one I just felt didn't have the same energy as the original film. It was decent, but it could have been better. Escape Room, I hated Escape Room. Really boring. The scares felt really cliche. I mean, I know it's not a horror film, but they try to make it like it is. Unlikable characters and a cliche sequel bait ending. Did not like Escape Room at all. Glass, I thought Glass was really underrated. I know a lot of people didn't really like it and felt it was a disappointing conclusion to M. Night Shyamalan's now official Unbreakable trilogy. And admittedly, I thought the third act was weak until the last 5 minutes, and I'm like, oh, okay. Then that made me like it, ultimately. You know, not as bad as some people say, but it's definitely the weakest film in the Unbreakable trilogy, if you want to call it. I didn't see John Wick or Mission Impossible, just because I'm behind in those franchises. And Skyscraper, oh, jeez. I get Skyscraper's in here because it's a action film, but come on. I mean, all it is basically a ripoff of Die Hard and the Towering Inferno. I mean, when the film's poster came out, it was accused of being a ripoff of the Die Hard poster, and the Skyscraper people were like, yep, we're ripping off the Die Hard poster, and we're ripping off the movie, we don't care. And they really don't. I mean, Dwayne Johnson tries for what he's got in the script, but it's just a muddled mess. And the CGI, oh my God, this had some of the worst CGI I've ever seen. Not as bad as Baywatch, but pretty close. CGI fires, they just need to be a lot better. For Best Fantasy, I guess if I had to pick a snub, it would again be First Man. I can't put that in science fiction because it's not fiction, it's based on a true story. And I know it's not your typical action-adventure type film, but it is a space drama, so that should make it count. For Best Fantasy Film, I get you're kind of restricted by what films come out, no matter how good or bad they are. Okay, I'll accept Aladdin. Dumbo, I didn't hate Dumbo, but it was nowhere near as good as it could have been. And I actually didn't mind Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, like I said before. It's definitely the weakest film that's ever been made for the Harry Potter universe, but I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people say it is. Godzilla King of the Monsters, of course, I didn't see yet. Mary Poppins Returns, yes, I'm glad to see that in there. Toy Story 4. And also Yesterday. I don't know if I'd really classify that as a fantasy film. I guess I can kind of see where they're coming from because, you know, it's about the Beatles somehow getting magically erased from history and only one man remembers their music. So I guess I can see that on some level. And I personally liked Yesterday a lot. I know a lot of people I know were disappointed by it. It has its problems, but I found it charming. For Best Horror Film, I didn't see The Dead Don't Die. I heard mixed things about it. Halloween, I didn't get a chance to. Hereditary, really good. I didn't get to see Overlord because, like Ralph Breaks the Internet, around the time that film came out, because they came out both at the same time, I had some family stuff going on, which prevented me from seeing it. Pet Sematary, I really like that. I think it's very underrated. I know a lot of people were disappointed by it, but I think it's better than the original for the reasons I said before, with like better production values, better actors, bigger budget, that kind of thing. So glad A Quiet Place and Us are in here. They were absolutely amazing. If they were not in here, I would be extremely upset. But the big snub here is Suspiria. I mean, man, Suspiria's not gotten a lot of love here, and I don't know why. Well, I guess I do, because I know it is a very divisive film. I know a lot of people really love it, but a lot of people really hate it. I don't know how many Saturn voters saw it, and maybe too many saw it enough to hate it, but I really wish there was more love for it, because in addition to all the other snubs it got, like for Dakota Johnson and Tilda Swinton, it was one of those horror films that really made you feel horror, but not like your traditional horror. And in fact, I feel it actually was better than the original Suspiria from 1977, because in that film there were some scares, but it didn't really focus enough on the fact that it was set in a ballet school, and it didn't really focus enough on the Coven of Witches. And this film, I felt, did that a better job by incorporating more of that into the story, so that we as the audience could get a better view of what we're witnessing. Best Thriller Film, the only one of these I've seen were Bad Times at the El Royale and Searching. And I've also forgot to mention there were big snubs in Searching for the acting categories, particularly for Best Actor for John Cho and Best Supporting Actress for Deborah Messing. They both should have gotten nominations for that. Greta and Ma, I mean, they were fine, but maybe not the best thrillers. I mean, to me, Black Klansman should also be in here because, like I said before, it was tight, it was intense, it was dramatic, and even at times it was funny. I mean, it kept me engaged more than any other film in 2018. And then finally, Best Science Fiction Film. Alita Battle Angel, it was alright, but it could have been a lot better, especially with the villains. But Rosa Salazar was fantastic, so was Christoph Waltz, and the production design and visual effects. Those two things actually should have gotten nominations, because they were fantastic. Didn't see Bumblebee. I heard a lot of disappointment about Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. I really loved Ready Player One. The visuals were fantastic, the performances were great, and I actually think it's even better than the original book, because the original book has a lot of the characters never meeting until the very end, and of course in a movie that could be quite problematic, so they fixed that part, and there's a couple other things they fixed from the book that I didn't like, but in the movie they improve on. But I can't go into that too much because that involves major spoilers. But yeah, really good movie. I know some people think it's among Steven Spielberg's greatest ever. I wouldn't say go that far. Top 10, no, but top 20, maybe. Probably between like number 15 and 20, but not like top 10. Solo: A Star Wars Story, finally glad to see it in here. Sorry to Bother You, really great to see that in here. And Upgrade, this is Upgrade's only nomination. I'm glad to see that's in here. I really liked Upgrade, but the ending I felt fell apart. It was kind of like a WTF ending, like No Country for Old Men, but not in a good way. I know a lot of people disagreed with me on that when I talked about it with them, but that's how I feel. And in addition to that, I think Logan Marshall Green also should have gotten a Best Actor nomination because he was absolutely fantastic. And yeah. So those are my thoughts on the Saturn Award nominations this year. It's a lot of films, a lot more than usual just because of the longer timeline they've given. So, but let me know in the comment section below what you think of the Saturn Award nominations. What do you like? What do you hate? What do you think got snubbed? And be sure to subscribe to my channel if you've not yet already done so, and click on the notification bell to get all my newest videos as soon as they're uploaded. And I will see you guys next time with my video on the Emmy Awards nominations. Bye!